Hi, everyone. This is Terence F. Clark, and I'm here with David on Musicians on the Record. Hit it.
Hi, welcome to Musicians on the Record. I'm David Ward. This is the show where we're bringing you the musician's story, and I'm really excited today. This guy is a real drummer, real musician. Terence Clark is on the show today. Welcome, Terence.
Thank you for having me, David.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for making the time to be here. I'm really excited for you, and actually I will say a little bit jealous because you are drumming for Robert Cray right now in the Robert Cray Band. Tell me a little bit about how long you've been playing with Robert and when did you get the gig? How'd you get the gig?
Oh, right on. Well, yes, I am very excited and fortunate to be on the road with Robert Cray. He's a legend, and he's an amazing guy. So I've been on the road with him for about a year and a half now, probably a little over a year and a half. I started with him, January of 2017, I got the call. And then I started on the road with him, I think that following March. So got the call January 9th, which is my birthday. He didn't know that. So yeah. So he called, and it was a huge surprise. And but the way I got the initial opportunity was my mentor Steve Jordan they were cutting the newer record, Robert Cray and High Rhythm. They were cutting that record in Memphis. And I got a call from Steve, and he was like, "Hey man, where are you, where are you, and what are you doing?" And I was kind of catching up with him, and he was like, "You want to play with Robert Cray?" And I was like, yeah, and that's it. Like, that's the story. And so he was like, "All right, cool. So I'll get them your info and blah, 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 blah." I was like, all right. And that's just really how it happened. And that was December of 2016.
Wow.
And then I just kind of waited around and got a call from Robert January 9th. And he called, and just super, like, amazing guy. Just called, just sweet. And he just said, "I would be honored to have you on the bandstand with us." I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like,
wow.
I would be,
right.
It was crazy. And so it just started from there. And they sent me a box of CDs, all of his CDs. Yeah. And I put them all in the playlist on all my iTunes and things like that. Yeah. And basically had to learn 50 tunes.
Wow.
Off the master list. And we didn't rehearse, showed up at the first show. And we had a longer sound check than usual, allotted for us to kind of work some stuff out. We went down. Yeah.
That was the rehearsal.
That was the rehearsal, yeah. Right.
Wow.
And it was just, this was like purely off of like him not really playing with me before, just going off the word of Steve, and that has a certain weight with it, Yeah. And so we showed up, and I think we went down maybe 14 tunes, and everybody was like, "All right, this is going to be good." And the rest is history.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And so Steve had recorded the album with him and was not able to go on tour.
Yeah, I think that was, he was either going out with John Mayer.
Okay.
He was out with John Mayer last year.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. And I think, Steve and Robert are very close. They're good friends. And Steve has worked with him and produced some stuff with him in the past. Okay. And I think it was just Steve suggesting, like, "Hey man, I want to get you a guy that I think could whatever, So I was just extremely humbled by that. Steve is a huge influence of mine. Yeah. Across the board, and not just in his drumming, but how he handles business and how he diversifies his different circles of working with different artists. That has always been very, like, inspiring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to get that call and to work with Robert and be free to be me has been amazing. It's been amazing.
That's incredible. It's a great, nice to be that first choice after Steve Jordan, right? That's pretty cool. So
yeah, I guess so.
Well, and obviously, that clearly wasn't your first rodeo, so to speak, as far as, like, you didn't just pick up the sticks 2 weeks before.
No.
clearly have some chops to get into that band. Can we talk a little bit about your story and when did music and the love of drums begin for you?
It began very early on before I even knew I existed, right? So I come from a musical family. My grandfather was a quartet singer, and he sang with all kinds of people. He was amazing. He was also a guitar player in his earlier days. And then my dad, he's the youngest of 5, and he's an organ player, piano player. So I grew up in my grandfather's church playing drums. But the story that I remember hearing is that when my mom was pregnant with me, my dad used to play rudiments on her stomach. So I didn't really have a choice, you know. I think my dad was trying to put together a band. He was just already, but and so that's kind of how it started for me. And I got my first drum set at 2, and other instruments, at 2. And my first pro kit was a Slingerland concert tom kit. It was a white marine pearl. I still have it today. It was my granddad's kit.
Amazing.
And and that's kind of how I started. And my dad really did an amazing job bringing me up on so much music, like everything you could possibly think of. And so it just got me used to what it meant to be a musician drummer, more so than a drummer.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that really, growing up and around my peers, everybody's playing and doing a lot of chops. And I had my moments where I was like really into Dave Weckl, really into Dennis Chambers, and a lot of, amazing drummers. But then it slowed down for me around like age 18, 19, 20, where I started studying like Steve Gadd and Steve Jordan and Carlos Vega and Al Jackson Jr. and Howard Grimes, like the guys that made songs, that played songs for singer-songwriters. And so that really intrigued me, or it really drew me to that style of musicianship. And so just kind of practiced that craft and practiced my sound and developing a sound, something that was unique, because drums are drums, right? Like there's so many people out here playing drums, and, it is what it is, but it's a special thing once you find your sound. And Steve mentioned this one time in a workshop that I watched him teach, and he told the drummers where he was like, look, anybody sitting behind, you should be able to sit behind any drum and be able to get your sound, period. And that was such a powerful statement, because you see him sit behind any kit and it's going to sound like Steve Jordan. You see Steve Gadd sit behind a kit, it's going to sound like Steve Gadd. Same with Vinny. Any of these amazing drummers, when they sit behind a kit, no matter what the kit is, what drum heads, all that stuff is trivial. They sound like themselves, So I really stood on that kind of foundation, and then had some amazing mentors in Memphis. Nico Lauris, Kevin Page, of course, my dad, Mark Clark, my grandfather, David Porter, the producer, songwriter. He wrote for Stax with Isaac Hayes. Wow. And learned a lot from those guys in a young age. They really they were hard on me in a good way, And so that was a fantastic upbringing. That was school, if you will.
Yeah. And these were also drum teachers, Terence, or were that mentoring life lessons?
Kind of a mixture of both. I think all of them drew me in to teach me about life and storytelling. And they weren't all drummers. Some of them were multi-instrumentalists, producers, writers, artists. But they were all people who taught me the importance of song and how to add to a song rhythmically and tonally from the standpoint of drumming, and they gave me the opportunities to record for the first time in studios and understand, how to touch a drum, how to play a cymbal, in comparison to like playing a live gig.
So, I mean, clearly you had the support of like a musical family growing up, obviously. And some of my research, just reading about you playing on Beale Street.
Yeah, well, Beale Street in Memphis is a very eclectic historical place. Um, it's it's not what it used to be, unfortunately. But when I was coming up, I mean, you could hear all kinds of blues up and down the street, but the real stuff was on the actual street, not in the clubs. There were these alleys and like, guys could set up on the street and just play. And you heard some gritty, cool, like real stuff, on the street. And I had the opportunity to walk down. I mean, I wasn't supposed to be on Beale Street because I was too young. There was an age limit, right?
How
And
old were you?
I started playing on Beale at maybe 18.
Wow.
Or 17, probably actually 17, 16, 17. And I remember the first time I went down there, I was so afraid because there's so many people down there, and all these security people and cops checking your license or your ID. And it got to the point where I was coming so regularly to play gigs where they knew who I was. It's like, oh, that's Terence, he's good. And that was cool. But you learn so much on that street. You learn one of the biggest things I learned on Beale Street was the importance of why people go to any club. The purpose of going to a club, people want to dance. And if you're doing anything that takes away from the groove, from people dancing, you're not doing your job. So I always paid attention to where the tempo was on a certain groove or song. I'm like, okay. And more people coming out on the dance floor. It's like, okay, that's the right space where they feel good to dance. Yeah. And I need to make a note of that, and that was also something I learned. I learned how to play with the band. I learned how to play and listen to players other than just focus on what I'm supposed to do,
Yeah.
Not just being in my head and like, okay, I got to make sure this beat and this tempo is this, because the reality is tempo, the human nature of rhythm, it moves, it fluctuates, it slows down, it rises. A heartbeat, that's the beat, that's it. And so music, when you're playing with a live band, it's going to feel like that. So not to get so caught up, you want to have great timing, have good time, but you don't want to get so caught up in if it speeds up a little bit or if it pulls back a little bit, that you're you get out of it. The energy is in the song, in the moment. And I learned that down on Beale. I learned the authenticity of the grittiness of American music, blues, classic rock, soul. Memphis is the home of a lot of those things. And a lot of people forget that,
That's right.
That's where it is,
That's right. Sun Records, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Where it began.
Exactly. And I take pride in that naturally.
Yeah, you bet. You should.
So yeah, Memphis has always been the greatest teacher for me.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that stuff. So what was the dream that was developing for you, whether it was 18 or 19 or even earlier, of what you wanted to do with music?
Man, so I've actually been thinking about that lately, and I've actually been sharing that very thought with some of my peers who have been trying to figure out what they want to do and how to go about it. I didn't have a plan. I think the only thing that I knew to do, and what my father taught me to do, is just stay focused and consistent. Because a lot of people, when they don't see it working out or happening as fast as they would like, they jump ship. And sometimes it's just about being consistent. There are a lot of people who are really great that gave up. And there are a lot of people who are okay, and I might be one of those people, but they stayed consistent and they kept going, and they got opportunities because they just stayed in it. I did eventually I wanted to be part of the root of American music. I wanted to be part of and wanted to play with artists that were rooted in American music, meaning jazz, soul, rhythm and blues, folk, Americana, the things that we forget being American that started here, because everywhere else in the world, they're trying to do that, but it didn't come from them. And so, and that will always stand the test of time, no matter what kind of pop style is happening right now, or what kind of hip hop style is happening right now. At the root of everything, the most timeless thing is always going to be the root of American music across the globe. And so I want to be specific in who I align myself with and who I play with and learn learn from. And so these opportunities, like to play with Robert Cray and Robin Ford and different people like that, to me, I'm still in like undergrad. I'm still in college and learning from these guys real time. And so I could be a person that could take that legacy and those lessons and the legacy of that to the next generation. Because I think a lot of that is getting lost. A lot of people are abandoning the root of the music, and a lot of people don't know where it comes from and why it's important to know that.
Right.
Nothing's new.
Right.
Nothing's new.
Right. Even the pop.
Exactly. Nothing about it is new. But I feel like you can't really create and be consistent in creating anything that's relevant until you understand the root of where everything comes from.
One of the things I ask, in the show from artists is some sort of business advice or music advice for other musicians. Like you said, those questions in a general sense, what kind of questions should musicians be asking themselves when offered a gig or looking at whether that's going to work for them or not?
One of the things I start out with is, first, thank you for considering me. You should always be grateful, because you don't have to get calls, That's the first thing.
That's right.
But the second thing is then just inquiring about what they need from me. What would they want? Get them to spell it out as clear as they possibly can, where there's no guesswork from me. And if they don't know, then like, hey, you guys figure out what exactly you might need from me and then get back to me. And that way I feel like I could properly give either the rate or whatever is necessary that they need. Because sometimes they'll give you a number and they say, hey, we got this opportunity with this rate, and da-da-da-da. And some parts don't align, and a lot of it is negotiation. Nothing is ever written in stone. And sometimes you just have to say, hey, look, I totally want to do this and I think this would be fun, but I can't do it for that rate. My rate for this situation is normally blah, blah, blah. And you'd be surprised, just communicating and standing up for yourself. And I wouldn't say standing up like bullying. That's not bullying. But just speaking up for yourself. People are like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, we could do that. Because let's be real, it's business. People are not going to offer you a bunch of money right off the bat if you don't.
Sure.
They're just, no one's going to do that.
That's right.
If I'm buying a vintage kit or something I like, I'm like, hey man, what's the least I could get it for, bro?
That's right.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So, and that's not a disrespect. That's just part of the game, part of the matrix of doing business.
Right.
And so that's a question I ask. And then, I like to know if they need rehearsals or how soon, because my biggest thing is get me the music as soon as possible. So how soon can you get me a Dropbox filled with the song list or the set list or whatever, or the demos for the session. And if they don't, most of the times, let's say in a session situation, they might not send a demo because they want to go in and just see what I'll do just off the bat. But like a live situation, tour versus a studio, I approach them very differently. And I approach, more major artists and indie artists very differently as well, because you have to show that you care and what level each person is. So a lot of those questions for me come from learning and experiencing moments where I was maybe taken advantage of or I wish I had done this or that and the other, and making a mental note saying next time, yeah.
Those learning lessons along the way, right?
Right.
So important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we also talk a little bit about the power of networking in the music business? Because, you talked, even just a great example, just getting a call from Steve Jordan. Obviously, that wasn't the first time you met him or heard of him. So
Right.
networking in the music business for you.
Man. Okay. So this is a big thing. I have a lot of friends who have always, some have kind of criticized me and some have been like, man, I just don't understand. And I share this. So the criticizing has come from like, man, you do all this posting and you share this and, you know, da 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 da. I just don't do that, man. I just can't. I just don't do that. And then some people are like, man, I don't know how to do that because it comes off. I don't want to come off as pretentious and it's all about me. And it's my answer to all that is that there's a balance. So my balance is understanding that for me, I don't network with the motive of trying to gain opportunity. I don't network because I'm like, oh, this person could give me this opportunity, or this person knows this person, da 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 da. I network because I actually sincerely want to get to know people. I recently said this to some other people. It's just kind of just what I say. It's like I network. That you should network sincerely for the purpose of getting to know a person, not what they can do for you, because that lasts much longer than the opportunity. And so that's how I've always tried to be. I don't always gel with everybody. So like, just because a person can give me opportunity doesn't mean necessarily that I want it, because I you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, sure.
So I think it's just important to just be yourself and be honest. Don't be showy. I met Steve maybe 5 years before that opportunity happened. And it happened in a very organic way. He was in Memphis again at Royal, and he was cutting, he had just finished Boz Scaggs' record that he cut there, and Ronnie Baker Brooks' record. And I was brought to the studio by David Porter, and David Porter introduced me to him. And then we went into the drum room, just he and I, just this very special moment. And everybody who had met him up until this point in Memphis, everybody's posting pictures. I met Steve Jordan, da 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 da. And when I met him, I mean, it couldn't have been more perfect. We literally were in the studio alone, and he got on the drum set. He's like, man, check out these drums. He started playing this groove, and I'm standing there just watching him. And I'm like, man, this is insane, you know? And he's just sitting there in this groove. And he gets up, he's like, hey man, come play this kid. It sounds great. I was like, okay. And immediately I just sat down, and I didn't try to reinvent the wheel. I just played the groove he played. And he's walking, he's pacing. He's like, oh yeah. And so he got a conga. He sat down, he started playing conga while I'm playing the groove. And I'm sitting here, I wasn't pulling out my phone and like, hey guys, oh my God, you gotta see this. I was just like, this is for me.
Yeah.
You know, this is for me. I'm not gonna, this is a real moment.
Right.
And we did that. And shortly after that, we went into the control room because they were finishing mixing this record. And he was like, you know what? It's just that quick. This is the first day I met Steve. He's like, you know, Boz is looking for a drummer. You want to play? Let me call Boz. And he calls Boz.
Wow.
Right there.
Man.
He's like, Boz. And Boz didn't answer, but he left a message. He's like, Boz, I don't know if you're still looking for a drummer, but I got one right here in Memphis, man. Give me a call. Let me know. And I'm sitting here like, this is how that works.
Right.
That's how it happens.
Right.
It's the sincerity of knowing that. And I don't know what he sensed from me, but I know what I've sensed from people in a similar situation, where you just see the heart of a person and the sincerity of a person, and they're there because they want to be there because they want to know you, right? I didn't ask him for that, and that opportunity didn't happen. I think at that point, J.J. Johnson had the gig. At the point, he had just got J.J. Johnson.
Yeah.
But it was just like, how, you know, and over the years, I would see him and we would hang out, whether it was in Nashville or, you know, Memphis, and he would check on me or whatnot. And I think it was just the situation of like, you know, now I have this opportunity. Let me call Terrence. And it was honest. It was sincere. And when I called him to thank him about it, he was just so like, oh yeah, man, no problem. All right, so to the next thing. And we just started talking about something else.
It's awesome.
You know, so those are the kind of opportunities I've had with people. And sometimes you have relationships where nothing happens, and that should be okay.
Right.
It's not about the opportunity. It's about, again, just knowing people.
Right. Yeah,
you know?
Building those relationships.
Yeah. Yes. The world is much smaller than you know, and your name can spread very fast in negative ways if you're not careful. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Powerful story. I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, I mean, he saw your heart just because the power of music, the power of drumming, playing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's insane. I have so many Steve stories.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great. Yeah.
Because I know you're on tour with Robert Cray right now. You also talked about later in the year in Europe playing with Robin Ford.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that and that performance and what's similar, what's different than?
Oh man. So I love talking about these two for sure. They know each other, they play with each other and things like that. And they both respect each other. It's amazing. So Robert, to me, as I've played with him more, to me, Robert is like a soul singer that plays blues guitar. You get what I'm saying? Like we don't play shuffles all night. We're not playing blues shuffles. It's like groove.
Yeah.
But his sensibility is blues guitar. And it's fantastic. And it's a song-based kind of structured thing. With Robin, I played with him a few weeks ago, and Robin is like this jazz musician that plays blues, man. You know what I mean? I mean, his songs, you have different time signatures. You have, the structure of the song. There might not be an 8-bar. It might be something very different in the way it changes up through the form of the song. And his soloing style, he doesn't run out. He doesn't repeat anything ever.
Amazing.
Ever. And then he wants to hear from you. So he wants you to solo, or he wants to hear the bass. And so you're doing, and it's stuff that you, like for me, I hadn't done in a while. Like I hadn't soloed in a while. And so to solo, because this guy's played with everybody. He's played with Vinny. They have a band together. He's played with everybody. And so to sit there and say like, oh, you want me to solo, bro? Like, and so anyway, those opportunities are fun. And it stretches you in different ways. And so I give you this situation. So this is one of those kind of like the stars align. So I'm going to Europe with Robert in October. And my buddy who actually plays for Robin Ford, he can't do the whole run over in Europe because he's coming back home to Nashville to support his wife who's running for Congress and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, long story short, it worked out to where at the end of Robert's run, I literally pick up with Robert over there. So it just worked out perfectly. And those things, I've seen other artists and other musicians that it worked for, and I'm like, man, how did they get to do that? They just, and it's fun when it can work out like that,
No doubt.
And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to be able to be on that side and playing with two amazing artists.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to be supported by my companies, Gretsch and Istanbul and Vic Firth. Like they're taking such good care of me, and it helps when you have something to offer. Like people want free stuff. And I say this all the time, like, look, you got to have something to bring to the table. You can't just want to play their gear and get something for free or discounted. Like, what are you bringing? It's a relationship, So
absolutely.
So I'm very excited. Gretsch is providing things over there, and I tend to always fly with my cymbals if it's a fly date. But I'm excited. I'm excited about that run, and it's going to be the first time that I've ever been on the road for a stretch of 2 months straight.
Okay.
It's going to be intense.
Yes.
Like without coming home. Like I've never done that. So that's going to be interesting because when we come back from Italy with Robin, I jump right back on with Robert for the last run of the year,
Wow.
through December 15th. So it's just, I'm super grateful, David, man.
Man.
I'm excited.
I'm really happy for you. It's fantastic. Where do you want your music to go from here? You've had a lot of success so far. Any thoughts or visions or intentions of where you want it to go?
I would hope that anything I'm a part of would just, the goal for me is that it would stand the test of time. That's the only thing that matters to me. I just want it to stand the test of time and be timeless. That's what I've always hoped for, and really strived to create in anything that I've created and touched, is that it stands the test of time, that, you know, it becomes something that is relevant throughout the years, you know, something that I could go back to when I'm older and be like, man, I needed to hear that. That's cool, you know. That's really it. That it would stand the test of time, and that all the artists that I've ever played with and will ever play with will be inspired by me being there, and also know that they are inspiring me, you know, and that I'm grateful to be part of their story. And that's the big picture to me, you know. So
Yeah. Great goal. Love it. Love it. Pretty cool. And then lastly, for musicians who, you know, we talked a little bit about some of that advice or some of the inspiration for musicians who would like to get to where you are, or maybe struggling in the music business. What advice would you give them?
So everyone's story is different. Everyone comes from different things. Everyone is influenced by different things. I would just say the biggest thing is being honest with yourself. You know, there are a lot of musicians out here that play music, but they don't study music. And there are a lot of musicians out here that study music and play music. I just think that you have to be honest with yourself to know if you really have what it takes to do it. Because if not, you're really going to waste a lot of time, and you're going to get upset and create tension within yourself. So the sooner you commit to your truth about that, the better. Definitely expound on different styles. Be able to play and morph into different things. You know, play with as many different artists and musicians as you possibly can, and learn how to adjust your style to fit those styles. Don't be a one-trick pony, you know. Elevate with the times. At least know how to do things, you know, in the digital world. Like for me, I'm a drummer, and I've always been, you know, taking pride of being like an organic drummer. But like, I have an SPDS pad. I know how to run triggers, and, you know, I know how to expound on sound, and that's fun too. So expound on the different things that it takes to be a musician of the today as much as you can. And find time to live real life and not be so fixated on the grind, and the hustle of trying to make it or find an opportunity. The only way you really get an opportunity and keep an opportunity is to be grounded, and you have to be grounded in something that's very far removed from this thing we call music.
Got to have more of that holistic, full life in addition to music, right?
Yeah. You have to care about people and care about things that are happening in the world, and because I think that informs the experience that you bring to what you play on a song, and whatever that story is talking about. You want to be able to connect to that topic, and if you hadn't really thought about it or experienced it or even been exposed to it, it's hard to really connect to the story, you know? So, yeah.
Absolutely. It's great stuff. This has been a real pleasure for me, Terence. I really appreciate you being on the show, and I'm so excited for you. You are living the dream, sir.
Thank you,
Terence
man. I appreciate
Clark,
it.
thanks so much for being on Musicians on the Record.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate it.